So hi, thanks Johannes, thanks airfocus for having me here, and thanks everyone for joining. So I'm Humberto. I'm an entrepreneur from Portugal, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rose.com, a spreadsheet. And the reason why I'm here is because we launched a lot of features, and we've learned a little bit about how we screw up launches and how we succeed with other launches, right? And really just trying to share that out of humility and having spent a lot of years doing launches with different products. Even before Rose, I've worked a little bit in online cosmetics, other software marketplace for sports, and other things. Some of these companies have been super successful and have been sold. Some of them have been super successful and are profitable and don't have more need for growth, and some have failed. So this is where I'm coming from.
Very cool. Very good. Yeah, that's a very extensive background. I think there's lots to learn. Yeah, Anna, I think it's time for the presentation. You can share the media. Perfect. And we'll make this full screen. Great. Yeah, let's hear it for cutting through the noise. Welcome to the webinar.
Are you guys seeing the slides? I'm seeing a loading.
Yeah, for me it's already appeared. Sometimes it just takes a second. By the way, I really like the style of the illustrations, which is nice.
Yes, when we did our rebrand, I'm waiting for this to load too. When we did our rebrand, we invested a bunch on defining an illustration style guide, and now we design our own illustrations, and we're pretty proud. It's one of those details that as you scale, you don't need a lot of illustrations as you're starting the first year or so. But as you start going out to market, those are the kinds of things that really add to the consistency. I am still not getting the slides. I don't know if anyone else is seeing them. I can actually share it from my side. Maybe
let's try that.
Let me see if I can share it and you guys can see it. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll just go through this. So the whole angle is cutting through the noise with your product launches. I'm going to talk about a bunch of things, all of which the main word here is critical. I'm just showing you the stuff which we learned. So there's a lot of subcontext which is not presented, right? Like this stuff takes time, and I'm there with you. Everything which you see on the slide here probably took weeks of preparation and lots of sweat and discussions, and don't for any moment imagine that this all came to be like that it fell on our lap like that. Like there was a lot of work. And finally, do take it all with a grain of salt, right? Like this is a grain of salt, big, large, super large grain of salt. Like some of this stuff apply to us, may not apply to you. Maybe we read it wrong somehow. I don't think so, but make your own judgments over this stuff. Just one slide explaining what Rose is. So we are a spreadsheet. And the reason why we built it is we think in the future, everyone has to have access to data, right? The future of jobs is people thinking about what's going on in their business. So you need data for that. And then you need to crunch that data and present the report. So the better it looks, the more you're going to convert, the better you're gonna run your business. So really, it's spreadsheet plus data plus sharing. And going right into the topic, these are our three core metrics. And if you're launching something, you have to know how that fits into your main metrics, right? I am not an advocate of, everything's about the metrics and you should be slave to your metrics, and not at all. We rebranded not because of metrics, we rebranded because we felt like we had to do. So sometimes we even go that way. But when you're doing many of these launches or feature launches, you have to track them back. And our main metrics are week 3 actives. So people who have been there week 0, week 1, week 2, week 3, so are there on the 4th week or later. Power workspaces, so companies that use us 3 days or more per week. And then virality, so people who are joining because they have been invited or landed on a document, converted through a viral post. Okay, and yeah.
Did you? Yeah, I love the metrics. It's, I think, really cool. We have something similar at airfocus, but it took us a while also to land on the point that like these three metrics are the interesting ones. And I was just wondering, like, how much iteration did it take you, not only to come up with the metrics, but also have the measurements straight? You don't need to go into like all the product analytics details, but I'm wondering, like, because you were also just talking about this probably took hours and months of work. How was that process?
Yeah, this was many boards. This is something that actually ties into investors. So we chose internally the same metrics which you communicate to investors. It took us many quarters and many board meetings to actually nail this, because in the beginning we were reporting stuff like weekly active users, but then those, you send an email and then you have a spike and maybe there's a campaign, and it's very hard to understand how are you moving with the real juice. And actually, the next slide is about that, which is for each of these metrics, you will see that they are broken down into sub-metrics on the next slide, right? So on the week 3 actives, we have 3 separate separations. The first is dark blue ones are people who have been there for week 12 or more. So these are much more loyal, and those are a high share of our people, which is a good thing, right?
It's a very good thing, yes.
Yeah, the fact that we can prove to our investors that those are even more stable and more predictable, and actually are a big share of them, right? And whereas the light blue ones are people who have been there between week 3 and week 12, and the red ones are people who jump on and off and who use automation. So they have an automation, and we know that the automation is doing something important because it's writing on a slide. It's not a random automation. It's an automation that, for example, writes on a Slack message or sends an email. So we know that there's a human on the end, but those people who come back infrequently. So those are the automation people. They don't really use it like an everyday spreadsheet, but they still derive high value from it. And so we paint those red, right?
Interesting.
And there's a lot of discussions with then go on what we do for each of the pockets. And then on Power Workspaces, we have the Power Workspaces, which is companies that use us 3 days or more. And then we have companies, the other line is 4 days or more per week. And then the black line is 5 days or more. And what we can see here is that we have been able to pierce and have growth on 3 days or more, but not on 5 days or more, right? Like people are not coming every single day. They're coming many days per week, but not every single day. And so understanding this also has some implications about how you think about the future of your product.
Absolutely. If you think about it in weeks or in days or in months.
Yes, also that, especially that. And then finally, virality, we just break it through different sources. For example, the red ones, which are the most valuable ones, are direct invites. I invite Johannes to participate in a spreadsheet. The yellow ones are link-based. I share a document to Johannes. I don't invite him, but I share a spreadsheet. And he says, that's pretty interesting, this spreadsheet. Let me see what it is. Oh, it rolls. Well, let me convert. Like it's that motion. Yeah. And blue ones are community ones. So I share a spreadsheet to inrows.com/community, which is a public community of spreadsheets, kind of like a GitHub of spreadsheets or a Dribble of spreadsheets. And then people convert through that. So obviously community stuff has a lot of spikes, right? Someone creates an amazing spreadsheet, has a spike, but then it's less predictable. And again, all of these things have their own motion.
Yeah. Is it also seasonality, like in the graph, or is it mostly like launching, as you're probably going to explain?
Yeah, so I'm not going to explain, but it's a great question. So right now we feel like we know that week 3 actives and Power Workspaces are growing, not at the speed we wanted, but they're growing. There's this big spike in here, and we've jumped completely to a different plateau, completely different. But then they keep growing at a linear scale, and we still want to have a geometric curve, and that is because of virality, right? We need virality to be far more stable in order for the growth in the other lines to be much more aggressive, right? And so these charts are interconnected, and this is a discussion which we have internally and externally with investors, right? Okay, if you guys have questions, we can also talk about, should we align, and we can discuss your charts and your problem. This is super interesting. And obviously, a little bit of a selling point, we do analyze it all in rows, right? We essentially do a BigQuery query, which gets the data from BigQuery, then we crunch it in rows, and then we show this dashboard. All of these charts are directly taken from rows, right? And we share it with investors, and everyone in the team has access to them. Okay, now on to lessons. Like one of the biggest mistakes we've done the biggest one of all was launching before we are ready, right? I think there would be even a bigger mistake, which would be if we never launch, right? Never launch is the worst part. But we've launched out of alpha in product time, and we actually nailed #1 of the day when we were in alpha. Pretty good. We felt very good about it. But then, people just turned left and right, right? Because the product just wasn't ready. A spreadsheet is far more complex than what we assumed, and people need far more guidance and far more little features than what we assumed, right? And then we launched it again as a beta, and we see that we only scored 3rd, and then we launched it as a V1, and we scored 1st and 5th, and then we launched as a V2 in 2023 in January, I think, and we were 5th of the day, right? So don't launch before you're ready. Wait until you're working well. And now the second thing is, it doesn't really correlate to this being 5th of the day or the 1st of the day. I'll touch point on this a bit later. There is no correlation, in our case at least, between how high you score on product hunt and the metrics. Rose V2, our launch, was the most successful launch we've done by far, and it's, every metric has improved. And I know this curve in here, which then continues at a pretty satisfactory level, was after V2, was because of V2. And you can see that we also had a far better grasp of what to communicate, and we did this Apple-like, this type of slide that everyone is doing. It's super cool. Everyone likes it as well. But it's not correlated to product hunt metrics.
Yes.
The way we did the Rose Point 2 launch, which worked well, the good thing was to do 5 sub-launches, right? So first we launched OpenAI, our first integration with OpenAI. Then we launched the BigQuery integration. Then we launched our API and connectors, right? That you can build something on top, but we also launched the Zapier and Make and Looker connectors. And then we launched data tables, a new way of simplifying import data, and then a new grid, like a pixel scrolling, super smooth, etc. Then we did one big launch, and we had one failure, which was product hunt. So product hunt only reached 5. That was the worst part. Everything else was amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because I think building a launch for product hunt is very different than building a launch for your relevant customers. Because product hunt community can be very specific to things that work for them versus the things that your actual customers in the end buy and value.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be dismissive. I would rather have scored product hunt as well. I'd rather have nailed that one too.
For sure.
But what we see is that it did not hurt us as an absolute scale. We still did many good things. We could for sure have done better. But I agree with you. Product hunt needs you to do very specific things for it to win there. And I'll talk about some of those things, what we failed. But the first important thing which we got right, and which this is the #1 reason why I think your companies will succeed, is product speed. You need to have speed. If you don't have speed, if you're not releasing fast, you're going to fail. There's very few exceptions to this, and especially in the software world. We are building a spreadsheet again. It's very heavy. For so long, it took us a long time to put features into production, and only last year or so, we've actually gotten to the speed which is appropriate for what the users expect, right? So that we can launch an OpenAI integration and a BigQuery integration, and then a full API and data tables and a new grid, all within 2 quarters, right? And build it within 2 quarters, right? And then we release it all in a quarter. So you have to have
questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Finish your sentence, then I'll ask a question.
Yeah, my point was you have to have this discussion inside your team about product speed. You have to have discussion. And again, many companies approach it in different ways. There's a million solutions to this problem, but not talking about it, I don't think is a solution. Yeah, sorry. Go, Johan.
Yeah, it's the same as not launching. It's also not a solution. Okay. First of all, there's always the question of speed versus depth, right? And how do you deal with this? Because launching a BigQuery integration is not the same as launching a really good BigQuery integration, right? So how do you do this trade-off between it's there on paper versus it really works for our customers? That's #1. And I think very related to this, so I'll ask it right away, a question from the chat, which is balancing the launch with like the quality of the launch with launching it fast, right? So like, do I press the button and it's live, and then I do all the communication afterwards, or do I take like an additional week or month or whatever you think in order to really prepare a well-executed launch? I think like the one is more internal about quality of the feature, and the other one is more external quality of the launch versus the need for speed.
Yeah, so it's an amazing question. First, I don't know the definite answer to that. I think the whole internet is still discussing what is better, and you see again companies succeeding by moving fast and breaking things, and you see Apple that every year releases the iPhone at the same time, and they're generally careful, and they seem to be doing well. I think looking at their stock. So I think there's different different opinions. The way we do it, addressing your particular question, is whenever a feature is ready, we ship it, but we only announce it. We only launch the feature marketing wise, and we have feature toggles for that. So some features are in the toggle, some aren't, are there, but we just don't talk about it. Only when we feel proud about it that do we start talking about it, right? For example, for BigQuery, we shipped it with a single solution. You could just do a query. Then we launched a different version where you could actually pick up the tables immediately and the reports. You could navigate through your whole BigQuery setup directly inside rows. And then we did more improvements that you would have a little box for writing SQL that would maximize, and then this and then that, right? So we did an iterative approach until we saw this solves our product and it solves our user product. So we exposed a couple of users and they're like, yeah, this is like, I want this now. Like, just don't wait any further. They still have requests, but I want this now. And that is the point at which we start releasing things. Other feature, for example, the new grid. Like, we release a completely new grid, new technology, new interactions, etc. And in there it was much more. It's less about the user. It's more about us, right? Can we measure the performance? Is it faster than the old one? Yes. Does it cover all of the use cases of the old one plus some new ones? Yes. Does it solve the problems with the old one? For example, the old grid had a lot of troubles doing freeze paint, like where you lock a column and a row, and we could not implement it. It was too costly. And so we shipped this one with a bunch of new stuff for the other one. So when we got to that point, it was like, there's really no point in not releasing it. This is amazing. Let's just market the hell out of it. And we did.
That actually is a good point that leads me right into another question that is here from Kavita, which is about when is something ready? And you already touched it, I think, that it also depends as always, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how you have this internal discussion about defining when something is ready. And maybe you even have like, I don't know, like a heuristic that you usually apply to define how ready does this need to be in order for us to launch this?
Yeah. So ultimately, it is up to the person. I don't decide these things. Like, so I was once in my past a very controlling, idiotic founder, product person who wanted to know everything and run everything, and you grow old and you learn that this is really not the way. Even though the instinct was correct, like the anxiety and wanting not anxiety per se, but wanting the best quality and wanting it to be perfect was right. Not trusting people is stupid, right? And you learn to find who the people are that satisfy the type of things which you're looking for. So the team decides. And when I say the team decides, it's usually the product manager plus the designer plus engineering manager. The three people have to agree. They have to like engineering has to say, this is it. The feature is stable. Designers, yes, I think we've accomplished the goals of this thing, and then the product as well. And then obviously we have each launch, each challenge. We don't talk about feature, we talk about challenges. Each challenge has acceptance criteria, success criteria. And so once we get to that success criteria, we know we nailed it. For example, we launch new charts and we want 5% of the people see the new chart and they succeed, 90% of them succeed in setting up the new charts correctly, right? And
90%.
So, it's an example. It's an example. But actually, for example, we did that with the data tables. We wanted 90% plus people to, when you think about, I want to get data from BigQuery, we wanted 90% plus people succeed in actually getting the data, right? And we got to numbers like that. So, and in the beginning, it was like 20-something%, right? So we had to completely redesign the whole experience a number of times, like until it was actually done. So the definition is ready. I think the best one is when your team feels ready. And the way you balance the team wanting to do it is you have an honest discussion before starting. What is the goal which you want to get to? And the goal is, and the goals vary a lot. Like I want 100 people to test it on the first 10 days. I want that people 3 weeks after the launch, there's still at least 50 companies using this feature, like something which is measurable and fair. And other than that, right, the team knows that they have to go until there. Otherwise, they won't be able to close this challenge, right? Or they have to say, I no longer can achieve it. I quit this challenge. And then you go to the next challenge. We're very flexible as long as the appropriate responsibility and actionability are there. And I think the team makes better decisions than me. Like so many times I log into roles and there's a new feature. It's like, I should have known about that feature, but actually, like, oh no, actually it's perfect. I actually should not have known. It's amazing. And I guess this is a discussion which you have to have maybe in the first year or two of a company. Everyone has to get around and decide. But after a while, like it's just dumb to not let your team do all of the decisions. And right now, our teams do the decisions.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Need for speed. Let's move on to the next thing. I'm trying to move it in the browser. Okay, there you go. And the need for speed, like we've gotten there very recently, right? So this is a curve. The yellow. This is a very well-known slide in the industry. Not our in particular, but many companies do it. And you plot user growth or revenue growth, whatever your important metrics are, against the release of important features per time. Very important slide, like an important investor did it, I don't know exactly who, maybe Benedict Evans or someone like that. And here you can see that in the first 2 years, 27, like the first column is 2 years, the second column is 2 years, then it's just a single year per column, right? The type of speed which we've gotten over time has been really big. And like 2023, we've already released as much as in 2022. In 2023, and this thing is just going to go faster. And you can see the yellow curve is the real curve of our users, real curve, not a fake curve. And so we definitely see a correlation between growth and releases. And this is what you guys should be aiming for, like with any company. Again, don't repeat our success of being super slow in the beginning. Now you can for sure achieve this level of performance and as a team, right? Like we in 2023 we did this new data consumption system from scratch, a new grid system from scratch, developing Canva components, like very investment heavy thing, an API for our product, lots of integrations, OpenAI, like a bunch of stuff, implementing search inside the product, like a lot of stuff in a quarter that we shipped. And why this matters, why the speed matters and being ready is that you want to surf the waves. There's going to be every couple of years, there's going to be a wave of important stuff. Right now we are in the AI wave, like everyone, AI, right? And you have to be ready to surf the wave and actually move along that wave, right? So when we started as a spreadsheet, there was nothing going on. Like everyone thought we were crazy. And then a couple of years later, around 2018, 19, the low-code, no-code thing exploded. And people said, no, the Rose is we'll call dash that. Like, these guys are amazing. These guys are genius. They're going to kill it at no-code, low-code. But actually, we didn't. We failed surfing that wave because our product was not ready. So all the other products which were ready really took off. And our UX wasn't ready. Our users weren't ready. The use case weren't ready. We failed. We missed that window. Right now, the no-code, low-code thing is still big, but there's no longer the pull in marketing that actually offers you like thousands and thousands of people. And now in 2023, when we launched AI, we were ready. So in 2 weeks, we had the first fully baked native integration to a spreadsheet ready to go live. And that brought us, a lot of users. It was very, very good. Minimal investment, maximum returned because we were ready on time as the wave was about to come ashore, and it has been good. So the reason for speed is you actually get ready to adjust to the things which the market is talking about. It's not about AI. We're still about the spreadsheet, right? And even though we're integrating AI, but if you are not ready for that, then people are not going to give you attention, and so that's important. Another thing which we have done is been this super PR, this is a real billboard, which we put up in front of the Microsoft headquarters, and we did another one in front of the Google headquarters, right? And you might think that these things are expensive. They're not expensive. They cost us $1,500, so $1,500, right? Because this billboard, if you can see, it's an electronic billboard, right? So it's a LED one. So you bid by the minute or by periods of 5 minutes. So we bid on the worst hours possible, right? The cheapest hours. And there's like a couple of kids with cameras that we got on, I don't know, whatever marketplace. And we said, let's sit there all day. So actually, most of the money was for the kids. Just to sit there all day, like waiting. If Rose comes on, we will only pay if you get a couple of pictures. So make sure you get the pictures. And so they did a setup. They just hanged around. I don't know what they did, but they got us good pictures. And then obviously we spread this out to every corner of the internet. All of the magazines that we got, like so much free press, so much mentions on every possible website and newspaper and print magazine. And this is amazing. It's amazing. So do crazy stuff, like when Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer were trying to launch Windows, they jumped off, elastic like this. They jumped off planes and did crazy stunts. Like you have to do crazy stunts. It is part of the internet to do crazy stuff. So do a couple of those, like 1 per year, 2 per year. We're gonna do something new 2023. It's gonna be cool.
Are you going to launch like an astronaut from the stratosphere and then go on the highest jump from a balloon?
No.
Or that has been done before, right?
It has been done before. One of the things which we want, not for now, because our system is not there yet, but I would love it eventually when and if Elon Musk and the Starlink people do go to Mars. I would love our spreadsheet to be the first spreadsheet that actually goes to Mars. And that needs a couple of technical advancements on our side, right? We have to be local first, and that we also run offline in a different way, but also with database and stuff like that. Because if Elon Musk wants to go to Mars with 100 people or 1,000 people, they're not going to be able to take 20 front-end engineers and 10 back-end engineers and 5 designers and 2 product managers, right? How will they build software in Mars? Like they will need software in Mars. They're not gonna have a cloud synchronized between Earth and Mars with a latency of I don't know how many minutes. So this type of problem, if we get to build this type of product in this type of technical way, we're thinking about it in 5-10 years time, then we will want to be one of these things, and obviously there's a big stunt there. But anyway, we'll do something crazy for 2023. Not Mars, but we'll do something crazy. Nice. Communication is super important. Email is your best friend. Okay, email is your best friend. You have to communicate to your old users, which already have signed up, even though some of them will have churned and some of them have not churned. You have to do a consistent email. Like we've gotten monthly email, which is super good for us. Like we write this email on the left, and obviously this one was for the announcement, so we didn't send kind of like typical update, but we just talk like there's a bunch of copy. We don't try to minimize copy. It's not bullshitty or trying to grab the attention for nothing. We actually try to explain this is what we launched and this is how it works. People actually like it. When we thought like we were going to be one of those companies that doesn't spam users. We don't want to send a lot of emails. We thought that this was good. We were missing out. Now we send like this monthly email. It works super well. On top of other emails, like we also have for onboarding and registration flows, we have these drip campaigns for helping you figure out the first 2 weeks about the product. This is more normal and much more tactical. But I think long term, you have to have communication with your user base. We want our users to understand these idiots really mean spreadsheets. They really mean business. They are serious about this stuff. And if you don't know how to talk about your product, then you're not that serious. Like if you're not comfortable putting your opinion out there and talking, you're not so serious. And then
question to exactly question to exactly that. Like we just today actually we adapted our onboarding flow because there was the amount of people who were unsubscribing was rising at a level that we were like, no, that's not making us feel comfortable. And I keep having these internal debates because I'm usually a proponent of being like, you know, what should do the most of the communication, the product itself, right? When you're launching somebody and nobody can find it without all your communication around it, then it's probably not a great feature. So like everything else, like email communication, in-app communication is just like a second best option to building it directly into the product. But I don't want to say I'm not alone with this opinion, but it's always controversial, right? Because sometimes we build features that are not easy to discover. Like recently we built a Gantt view, for example, and people don't create views all that often. So like going to that menu where you can see the new views, it's not really obvious. So we had to do an announcement, and it helped. It really helped. Like we had like 200 people creating a new view basically on clicking the button that the announcement goes live. So it was a really great idea. But I was wondering how you think about this, right? Because you were just saying like you also wanted to be cautious in the beginning, and then you kind of put it up a notch. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel you touch all the major points, and I am there with you. There's a balance and there's a discussion about what things should work and which things you should communicate more or less. Obviously, it's better if your product speaks for itself and you don't need to introduce anything. Like this, it's better, right? Like, and to that regard, key features cannot need to be explained. For example, we release a new grid. We don't have to explain the new grid to users. It has to be intuitive. Like the way it works, adding new columns, adding moving columns, adding frozen panes, and whatever. All of that stuff has to be intuitive, and you're not going to create a guide on onboarding to that feature, right? But then you start going towards features which are not on the main screen that people see every time they go on your product. And some of them are optional flows or new types of ways of doing things. And for those, you should talk a little bit. That's why we have this. That's why we have these feature release announcement, this splash screen that actually highlights a couple of new features and a couple of big announcements. And it's like, this is the new stuff. We also extensively use Intercom. Intercom is not only the chat product, but you can also do guides inside the product. You can say, if a user with these particular properties opens up a spreadsheet, then highlight that little button and say, hey, there's a new button here. So we do that also a lot for new things. So we actually, it depends on the features. But I would say I'm still happy we're doing email because this email once a month allows us to sediment what is more important. It's a different time views. Like this is what mattered over the last month because we can talk about everything. We launch features daily. Like we do daily push to productions, multiple pushes to production daily, right? And maybe there's a feature or a change on a feature every week. So every month we just focus on the key things which are there, and I think that this works well for us.
Okay. Yeah. That is probably also true. Especially when like you're also launching something that people have not been looking for. Like it's not yet, they didn't know that this is a problem they could solve, right? So then that also really makes sense to educate them a little bit around that feature. So it's something that they weren't aware before.
Yeah. All okay. Right. There are a few questions from Kavita. How do you gain the trust of loyalists of Excel? Good question. If you know the answer, let me know. We don't know yet. Excel is a terrific product, and we feel like it is a terrific product for multiple reasons. One of them is it uses the Excel standard, which we also use, so we're full compatible. So that thing is not an excuse, but then it's extremely fast. We are not at the speed of Excel. We're at the speed of Google Sheets right now, right? So we went from being slow to now at Google Sheet speed, and now the next question is, can we get to Excel speed, right? And these are some of the products. And then other things are about the feature completeness. Like Excel has hundreds of features, and the online version, which is not as good as the offline version, the software which you install locally, had like 5,000 or 6,000 engineers working on it. Like our team is like 30, and so it gives you kind of like a proportion of how much work is there. Now, we feel like there are certain use cases that people convert to us, even though they are from Excel. For example, if you want to import data from a SaaS, if you want to load data from Google Analytics or BigQuery or Snowflake or Postgres or MySQL, you want to load this database onto your spreadsheet and then do a query on top or whatever. It is much easier to do in rows than it is on those products. And again, it's about segmentation. We want to be the fastest way for you to load data, import data, and then create a report which you share. And so these differentiators help, but Microsoft has 850 million spreadsheet users, and we're not even at a million users. So they clearly are there, and they're big. And this is our goal, to erode their advantage slowly. So to answer your question, create these very different features which they cannot do. And Excel cannot build and will not build a BigQuery connector, because BigQuery is a Google thing. They won't happily build that thing. So we have both the Google data and we have the Microsoft data and everyone else data. We have the Salesforce data, and all of these guys are competing with each other, and we kind of like are neutral players, so we can connect better and start eroding that thing, as well as building the parity features which people want.
So if I may summarize this, so you're finding this niche where you can be 10 times better, right? So there's like this one thing that you're very sure that you are better than the incumbent, the big Excel guys, right? Because if you're trying to beat them at their own game, like you'd lose. It's just probably impossible. Yeah,
100%. It's exactly how we think about it.
Yes.
Next thing, communication platforms, right? So we launched these launches on LinkedIn and Twitter and Hacker News and Product Hunt. And let me tell you, those are very different, right? So for example, on third-party platforms, right? LinkedIn has been very good for us. Our type of product, I don't know why it converts much better than Twitter. Even though on Twitter we get like these super big people with large followership talking about us, LinkedIn is still better. We didn't want it. I'm not particularly falling in love over LinkedIn, but it just works. So find out what works. And then Hacker News, it's something which you always have to try. If your product is technical or there's a technical angle, you should do it, because people in there actually drive a lot of volume. Not only the people going there, but then backlinks after a while, right? If you score well on the Hacker News, then lots of other websites are going to start linking to your product, which is going to build up your position as an SEO target. So Hacker News has worked super well, even though Product Hunt we failed again. But Hacker News more than made up for the difference from Product Hunt. Really, we know there's a company that I actually invested in that launched on the same day as us on Product Hunt, and we got to number 5, and they were the number 1. And let me tell you, we got like a high multiple of converts and long-term users as they got, right? Because I know how many people they got initially, and so it does not really matter if you score super well on one of these platforms. It matters that overall you succeed on a couple of channels that are important to your user base. And again, Product Hunt, I would think it would matter for us, but we did a bunch of mistakes in there. For example, Product Hunt, apparently you're supposed to launch and talk to your users and direct them at different times. For example, if you're talking to US users, you should direct them to the Product Hunt page at the times where typically an American user would go there. And if you're talking to people in India, it should be at times where they would. And we kind of like did it all at the same time.
We did exactly the same mistake.
Yeah, we did not talk to the Product Hunt people also. So even on the day, it took us like 2 hours to get actually on the ranking that people could upvote us for some reason, because they didn't activate or accept us or something. And this was stupid. We could have talked to the people before. Hey, tomorrow we're going to do this. We're going to launch at this hour. Please make sure you insert us, blah, blah. So we were just dumb on some of the stuff. And it's rather easy to fix. I think if you search online, you will find lots of guides on what to do and what not to do. but don't do it like us because we boxed it.
Absolutely. I think the main thing here is also the whole thing. The main thing is the thing about that just because this one channel, Product Hunt, doesn't work as well on that day for your launch, spreading across multiple channels with similar messaging and all around the same positioning, then it can work, right? If you're solely reliant on Product Hunt to push you forward, then you're also very reliant on the launch logic that Product Hunt offers. And that is very different from what can happen on Twitter, from what can happen on LinkedIn, and how Hacker News works, right? So I think being diverse with this, and I think one point though that you also mentioned, like know where your community is. This whole point of like where are your promoters and where will they talk about you, where will they push you, and if they hang out on Twitter and you then see some results from that, then probably Twitter is your channel.
Yeah. I think we have fans of the platform on Twitter, but I guess the users are much more on LinkedIn. I guess this is what we learned, and we also have our internal forum and community, which is self-contained, and we kind of control that one.
I can imagine that like Excel people or like Rose people, they really get into discussions. I have this friend who's a business analyst, and whenever she's with her business analyst friends and they talk about some nerdy problem that they need to solve with their data, I'm like, you guys, that sounds very interesting. I don't understand what you're talking about, but they're so happy, right? And I can imagine having like Rose people having really intense discussions about how to solve this one challenge about importing this huge MySQL database and then formatting it correctly, and then being very happy about the solution that they found. I can see that this is something very viable for your kind of product.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for communities to take a long time to develop, right? And you have to start in the beginning. You have to have this element of talking to your users and them feeling like it's a conversation. The other day I was talking to this founder of an app, and the app is doing quite well. And one of the things that I really liked the most was that since the first day they shipped the first version, and until now, where they already have many users, the feedback button has always been the most prominent button in every screen of the app. So it is really assuming that you want to have. It is not really a community, but it does help you form a community, because people will trust you more if you listen and if you reply. Then people are much more likely to then engage in other social ways around your product or around your solutions.
That is a very good bridge to the question. Another question from Kavita, which is about user acceptance testing and how you incorporate this before the actual launch of a feature or product.
Yeah, it's a good question too. Well, we don't always do it. We don't do it for every feature. Some features we say we're not going to do user testing. We're just going to test it live, and then whatever we see in the products and whatever we see in the metrics is what is there. And then if we need, we'll change the feature. Some of them we do. And we do that with, for example, feature toggles. We have a bunch of features that we activate feature toggles, and we activate only for a couple of users. And then we see what they're doing, or just internally, just for the roles people, if it's a more basic feature, right? Like if it's something that is not user or use case dependent, then we just, for example, seeing how the right click works and what kind of menus are there and whether people can navigate it correctly. I feel quite strongly that if our team can navigate around that thing, then we're fine. But when you're talking about BigQuery or importing type of data, that is for marketing users, right? It's not for our team. Well, we also have marketing people, but so in there we are much more careful, and we actually show it to people and have this incentive of being careful even after we launch, like taking the feedback loop from users much more seriously, because it's a solution for them. It's not a broad, it's not an horizontal feature. It's a business component.
That brings me to another question, which was for a previous slide, the one with the launches in relation to the user growth. In my experience, it usually gets harder to do exactly what you just explained, the more features you have. Also looking like what oftentimes happens is that you get slower in launches, the more features you have overall and the more users you have overall. But what you explained is that you actually got faster. And now I'm interested in like, what were like the key things that you were looking out for in order for you to not be slower with a wider product, but instead be faster?
Amazing. Very good question. It also touches a little bit of the question that Ala was posting. The reason why we are faster as we grow is that our product is extremely modular, and that we're actually increasing because our product is getting simpler and not more complex. So we are shipping more stuff that makes the product simpler. It is a bit counterintuitive, but I can explain. For example, instead of having to use functions to do queries, for example, or to import data in a complex menu, we have a single wizard where all of the data is connected, right? And it's a common interface for all of the integrations. And even if you're talking to a custom API on an endpoint, we also have HTTP methods, get and post and whatever. Then we let you pick whatever columns and we flatten the documents so that you can have it on a tabular way. And these components, which are very expensive to build, serve all kinds of use cases. So we are building, but everything which we add makes the products overall transversely much better, much easier to use, etc. And so this actually, it is quite fortunate for our case, even though we had a very slow start. As we ship features, we're getting simpler, faster for the user, faster at developing feature, higher retention, and better cognition of use case with user. So we started from zero. It was very frustrating, but now like everything seems to fall on the right place, right? Like we know that the spreadsheet works, we know that people use it. Now people ask, for example, we want a text component, right? We have a concept where you can layer tables with charts, right? And they want a text component in the middle. We already have a little plus button that you hover and show it. So shipping that feature is not going to make it more complex. People, what they're going to start doing is instead of writing text into the cells of a table, they're going to have the text component. So we will have more features, but it actually will allow us to grow because it's going to compound on top of everything else. We're not hiding features in corners. Everything falls on the same broad volume. And it feels like we can continue this path until we get to 1 million plus users, right? Simpler and faster and better for users as well. And the second part about collaboration across functional teams, like we did not have and still by and large do not have a vertical or functional leadership. For example, we do not have a head of product. There is a central figure who is the head of product, but the head of product is not the manager of the product managers. He's just a practice leader. So he just helps people. This is the way of building for the product, and this is the way we should be talking to users. This is the way we should be prioritizing. It's much more of a practice thing rather than being the boss. The teams are multidisciplinary and they take decisions. So design and engineering and product have to agree. This is the base rule of all of the Rose team, and it's been one of the innovations which did work. We also failed a lot team-wise, but one of the things that has worked has been design is not more important than product. Product does not decide what goes on the feature. It does not. Product has the mission of collecting all of the feedback and explaining it super well, and then the team has to have a debate on that feedback and decide what to do, and everyone has to be in agreement. Right? Yeah. And what we've seen is like instead of then we'll never agree. No, actually people agree a lot. It's much better because now designers know the business problem, and engineers, when they want, they also want to have it. Sometimes they seed it out and say, whatever product manager says, we're fine with it. And you see that in different types of products. For example, features that are extremely complex engineering-wise, we see that engineers take the lead. For example, doing the new grid. Instead of product manager saying, what we want for the new grid is that, it allows 10,000 cells and it allows whatever and columns and has to work this way. Like that wasn't necessarily the case. It was like engineers went ahead of like, our grid is fucking slow and it's terrible. Let's build another one that kind of mimics what we want. And so we had a base description, like 4 or 5 lines. They worked on it until they demoed something that was extremely fast and it allowed to do multiple types of things. And then we onboarded engineers and designers. Okay, now what we want it to look like. On the other end of the spectrum, you have, for example, VLOOKUP, right? The function VLOOKUP, right? You don't want to give it to a designer or engineer, like the product manager, like he goes into Excel and Google Sheets, like this is how VLOOKUP works. And it has to work this way. Like you define test cases and you define how inputs go to outputs, and that's it. It's like a business kind of led functionality. And so you have to recognize where things come from and what is the point of a feature. Like, and when you do that, I think the team really shines. It takes a while, many discussions with the organization to get to this point, but eventually you learn where the ideas and where the effort and where the uncertainty is. And for example, a feature that is design. I'm sorry, maybe I'm taking too long on this one, but it's super
no, not at all.
Yeah, one of the topics that has to be design led are, for example, the flow for invites. For example, right? You invite people to the spreadsheet with multiple roles, and then you can also invite to the folder or to the workspace. And this thing, we've tried to do it. The first version which we had a couple of years ago was described by a product manager, and it was a fucking mess. Like, because you try to describe it in text, but nobody visualized it. It's terrible. Whereas this last version, designers said, like, okay, this is high visual uncertainty, but low technical uncertainty. Like, whatever you say, invites have to work. Like, engineers will build it. Like, it's not a big deal, right? And so designers built this flow, and it made sense, and everyone could discuss. Yes, I've seen this work. It makes sense. Kind of like works like a normal product. Blah blah blah. And then you give it to engineers, and then engineers can go from there, and product managers can help them prioritize, etc. I hope this answered your question, Ala.
I cannot speak for Allah. It definitely answered my question. I think, though, that requires a lot of organizational maturity, right? And everybody needs to really work on eye level for this concept to work. And I think it's very admirable that it does work for Rose. And I think that the results that you presented also speak for this, right? Keeping up the velocity, even though the product theoretically becomes more complex, even though you explained it's becoming more simple. That is like getting these things together, right? The product growing but becoming simpler at the same time. And then maybe that's my last question for like the last minute is usually at one point you start neglecting existing features for new features. Not at some point, like it can happen that you neglect what is already there for the new stuff that you're launching. But from what I understand, what you told me is that what you try to achieve is with each launch, you're improving what is already there as well, right? So adding new stuff improves existing stuff, and it's not just adding a new shelf on the side. It's like with a text component, for example.
Yes. Well, we're not doing text components soon, right? Because we're still making the other. There's still we really want to do it, but there's still so much value to unlock on the other features. We see it. We see. After a while, where the value is coming from, and how you optimize these type of things. And again, what the discussion which we have each quarter is, it starts at the top. What's our vision? Is our vision? What's our use case? Is it still our use case? Do we still believe in this use case? Can we still grow in here? And our use case right now is business users building spreadsheets with data and doing reporting on top of that. Within business users, marketing people, because they have lots of users, lots of campaigns, and so they have to analyze a lot of Google Analytics and sales and ads data and whatever. And yes, is it still important for us? Yes. What are the key problems which these people have, and how can we get faster to very, very good value for these users, right? And so from that conversation, usually the point is what users ask is a lot of small things, small improvements over the existing product, but that there are huge chunks, huge carve outs which are more valuable. So you have to manage those. For example, users ask us for inherit formatting. So which is when you add a new row on a table, you want that the format, if something was $1 on top, or the 3 previous cells were dollars, you want that the next one is also $1. There's actually there's a logic here, but whatever, doesn't matter which one it is. But they actually wanted that because from the moment you import data automatically from BigQuery and you automate it every day, refresh this BigQuery data, the tables are going to grow, and you don't want that you have some cells which are dollars and some cells which are applying a default number, right? And so this is one of the small ones which we've said, how does this feed into the perception of the report and the quality of the data? It actually feeds a lot, right? Because then people are sharing these documents. And so we decided to fix this small item and then some other bigger items. I don't know if this fully answers your question, but we don't really have a fully set process. It's a discussion. We reprioritize the full roadmap for the full company every quarter. Every quarter, we kind of like do a reset. What's important to us? What does that mean? What type of challenges are there? What are the most important to our users? and we have an interesting discussion about what we want to be, what is visible to them, to the user, what is not visible to the users, and we kind of balance that out. And when you mentioned operational or team maturity, yes, I think that right now we are mature, which is good and bad, right? It means that we already know each other, and there's less excitement as well on some stuff. But we no longer have drama around these things, right? Like, how should we decide? And are we listening to everybody? There's already a time of the quarter. It's 3 days where we have the opportunity to discuss the roadmap, and there's X sessions in there, and it's 3 days. And we don't discuss roadmap outside these 3 days. So people have to go prepared for these 3 days, and it's a field battle. Like, everyone bring your axe and your swords, and that there's no hierarchy here. The best idea wins, and that is really how we solve it on those 3 days.
And I think, like, to me it makes a lot of sense. I just know from reality that it's sometimes very hard to achieve. So I think you can, like, it's very cool that it works for Rose. And with this, we only have 1 minute left to say goodbye. So thanks very much, Umberto, for the super valuable insights. I personally think this was very great content, and I'm very confident in the future of Rose with this kind of attitude, if I may say so. Thanks also for taking the time. Thanks to everybody who attended and for your questions. We'd love to see you again in a webinar. Hit the bell and subscribe. You know the drill. And until next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you again to Ala for helping organize this. Thanks, Johannes, for your question. And thanks everyone for the question. Your questions are pretty amazing. You know, I guess you hopefully will not do the same mistakes I did along the way.
Bye-bye.